Is there a better way to start a Father's Day message than a dad joke? Huh? You don't sound too enthusiastic about that. I'm going to do it anyway. I don't care. It's a cheap laugh. I'm doing it. So, what do you call a fake noodle? An impasta. It's all about delivery, friend. Like I like Jerry Seinfeld. You know, he said, you can tell what was the best year of your father's life. It was because he froze the clothing style and he's writing it out till the end. You know what I'm talking about, Dad. Look at me. So, do you know what a person who puts themselves in the God seat is? They're an imposter. And if you're frozen in the way you're doing life and you just won't change, well, chances are you're stuck in a way that God doesn't want you to be. We're barreling through the book of Mark, and up to this point, in Jesus' tour to save humanity from annihilation, we find him at the point where he's proven in every conceivable way that he is God-man. He is God who came into the life of a human being. He's healed most forms of diseases. He's healed broken bodies and broken spirits, and he's taken over nature and controlled it. He's even raised dead people to this point. And then last week, Dan talked to you about how two long dead iconic figures, Moses and Elijah, met Jesus on a mountain. And that's pretty amazing. All of that is to show that who he claimed to be, that's who he is. He is God in a man's body. He is the Son of Man. And the point of today's message is quite simple. The great ones make less of themselves by becoming more like Jesus. The greatest dads, the greatest moms, the greatest people in the world are people who become more like him. Now, you and I have likely known thousands upon thousands of Christians in our lifetime, or at least several. And some of them we would say, you know, they're truly a great Christian. They're a great person. Now, in Mark chapter 9, verses 30 and following, Jesus clearly teaches us that greatness comes from making less of me and more of he. So we're going to read through this passage. I'm going to pause occasionally, make a few points, and then we're going to talk about greatness. That's really the theme of this. So keep that word greatness in your mind as we're rolling through this. And then after we're done, you can take Pops out for some enchiladas or a steak or something like that. He'll love that. So here we go. Mark chapter 9, verse 30. Then they departed from there, that's the mountainous region that they had been in, and passed through Galilee, and he did not want anyone to know it, because he wants to do some things specifically with these 12 disciples. For he taught his disciples and said to them, the Son of Man is going to be betrayed into the hands of sinful men, and they will kill him. And after he is killed, he will rise from the dead. Now remember, they'd been hearing this. But they did not understand this saying and were afraid to ask him. Now let me just pause here and make a statement. The model of true greatness is the Son of Man. It's Jesus. He's already told them what his mission will be and what he wants to accomplish. And he's talked about his cross. And he's saying to them, you need to carry a cross, not his cross, because he carried his cross quite splendidly. But there's a cross we carry if we follow him. And he calls us to lay down our souls, our lives before him. The great ones, that's the posture of your life. It's that you kneel before Jesus. You worship him. Now, in the greatest act of selfless love, the holy God of the universe came down and did his work to save us. But my greatest actions in life, yours too, are when we're selfless. When we serve others above ourselves. When we deny ourselves. Parents, dads, it's when you lead your families that way. We kneel before Jesus in worship. And we show our children that God is number one in our life. He's the primary source of life for us. The great ones posture their lives that way. Here's another dad joke. Ray Romano, you know who he is. Having children is like living in a frat house. Nobody sleeps, everything's broken, and there's lots of throwing up. There is a lot of chaos when it comes to being a parent, a dad. There is. And sometimes it's hard to grasp that, that we still have to hang in there and do our very best to love them forward. Oftentimes, we forget that the way of greatness is different than what this 24/7 world tries to tell us about great people. It tries to show us that, it's all about us and less about everyone else. Now, Jesus says betrayal, arrest, death, and resurrection. Let's read on and see how this goes. Verse 33, then he came to Capernaum, this is where Peter lived, and when he was in the house, probably his, he asked them, what was it you disputed about among yourselves on the road? So they were having some kind of argument while they were traveling there. But they kept silent, for on the road they had disputed among themselves about who would be the greatest. So you see why this word is so important to us today. Last week, you heard about that experience where Peter, James, and John were taken by Jesus up onto a mountain, and it was there that they witnessed something truly outstanding, a spectacular thing where Jesus, Moses, and Elijah were together. Now, these two guys have been dead for centuries, so this is really, really strange. But Jesus told the three who witnessed it not to say anything, even to the other disciples. And they didn't. They obeyed, I guess. But you know how it feels like if you get a special privilege and like you're Peter, James, or John, and Jesus is taking you and you're one of the other 9 who's like, where are they going? Oh, how come I didn't get invited, And then they come back and the 9 are like, hey, what happened up there? And they're like, well, guys, you're not quite special enough yet to know everything, so someday we'll tell you about it. That's probably what's happening here. I mean, it's probably the issue, that there's the ins, and then there's everybody else, right? So isn't it amazing, though, the things we dispute about? Like, isn't it just crazy, some of the things we argue about? And I think Jesus shows us something else about greatness in this little scenario, and that is the disruptors of true greatness are arrogance, shame, and fear. He steps into this conversation. He shifts the conversation. And I do wonder if Jesus were on that road right in the middle of them, if that would have even come up. I don't think it would have, Like, would the conversation been different? I wonder if he were physically to show up in your latest dispute. I wonder if it would have changed that dispute. Mine too. Isn't it amazing the stuff we argue about, the stuff we dispute about? I mean, would it change the conversation? Like, he shows up, what are you and your spouse fighting about? Who moved the car keys? What are you and your dad arguing about? He wanted to see my text with Marco. What are you and the church leader talking about between services? How to share hope with Jesus, how to reach our community, how to, make our families, give our families something to hope for. Didn't like last decision made. I mean, what if your normal routine in prayer, like if you actually had Jesus pop into the room and sit with you, what are you praying about? Oh, good food, good meat, good God, let's eat. Bearish stock market, make me richer. America great, America not so great. Aunt Margaret's gout. I mean, what would it change if he stepped in? Well, he steps in here. And then, I think he knew they needed to see something. It says, and he sat down in this house. He calls the 12. He says to them, if anyone desires to be first, he shall be the last and the servant of all. That is what a leader is. Now, they've already established their concerns about Jesus' doom and gloom, arrest, crucifixion, death and resurrection. For whatever reason, they're not seeing the resurrection. But they weren't picturing greatness from that. They just couldn't see it. And so it's more for them, when are you going to conquer our enemies? And that's what greatness was in their mind. That's what a king does. A king comes in, takes power, control, gives others administration roles, and rolls over everybody else. It's so human to elevate ourselves. Jesus, do you know how many years I put in here? How long I've been coming to this church? Do you know who my family is? Do you know how much money I've given? Do you know how many hours I've logged in at Kid City or at Heartland Celebrations of Freedoms for 22 years? And now you're changing things again? And now you're going to do that? Or let's just think about life in general. The cancer cells have multiplied. Are you kidding me? My spouse is leaving me at this point in my life? I've been following you for years. The kid is using again? My job's getting outsourced? The rent is due again? When are you going to start paying off for me? That's kind of the attitude behind it. When will you pay off? Disruptors, arrogance, fear, shame. So he takes the 12 away, and then he's again teaching them, look, I'm a different kind of leader than you're looking for. And unless you become familiar with me and follow me for who I am, you're going to be left out. And one of them, that's what will happen to them. It's because here's the thing. The engine of true greatness is service. There's two kinds of greatness. You probably know this. If you just think through it, you'll know what I'm talking about. But there's two kinds of ambition. And one is that we're going to gain fame and attention and influence and power in the way the world teaches it. So the measurement of ambition is always how many people will be serving me? How much power do I have over how many other people? How wide is the extent of my influence on earth? How far has knowledge about me traveled so that people know who I am? Thank you, Internet. Who of us has not been drawn to the desire to be known, to be valued, to have it our way, to find hope in the ways that we approach hope and want it? And what he's just showing us is it's not found there, friends. Greatness is not found there. The true measure of greatness, again, is how many do I serve? How many am I willing to minister to? How much am I able to get off myself enough to do something for someone else? That is the mark of greatness in God's economy of greatness. And you can see how opposite those views are. And we know this because we struggle with it every day. It's a radical way of living. It's exactly the opposite of what we're drummed into. That is why, as we grow as Christians, these measurably happen in our lives. It's why we need to be consistent in our walk with God, even when it gets hard. Like, it's important to show up and to be a part of a church family and to get involved with people in the local church, because it's the best place to serve people. It really is. It's the right motives, at least, if it's done well. The natural inclination is we simply get deeper and deeper into trouble because we seek the world's remedies for our happiness. We seek the applause of others. And friends, that just turns into cobwebs and ashes in our hands. It's just dust in the wind, my friend. That's all that is. So they needed an object lesson, and probably we do too. We're no different than them. So here's what he does. Then he took a child and set him in the midst of them. Probably Peter's kid. I'm just guessing. Maybe a nephew or something. And when he had taken him in his arms, he said to them, so it's a small child. I don't think he was, a 300-pound football player who's 18 years old. I think, whoever receives one of these little children in my name receives me. And whoever receives me receives not me, but him who sent me. So here's the object lesson. The true greatness can be shown to us by a child. Now, in order to grasp this, here's what we have to do in 2022. In 2022, we have to understand that they didn't worship children like our culture does. They didn't elevate children above God like ours does. And understand that the first century Greco-Roman view of children was much different. Their possessions, their animals, oftentimes had more value to them in their minds than their children. Okay? In Rome, a male child might finally be accepted by his father at the age of 12 if the life coach that was training up that child said they were valuable enough. Otherwise, the Roman father would kick them out. And so understand, this is a whole different world then. For him to put a child in the middle of the room and say, become like one of these, that would have been unbelievable to them. And girls, I mean, I understand this is a male child, and I understand that I believe Jesus has changed the world when it comes to male, female, if we'll let him do that at least. But if you're feeling a little slighted and needing some wokeness in this, in the first century, you had one great value, and it wasn't your brain. Okay, so Jesus started to change that. It's up to us to continue to change it. He took the very least in the first century, he elevated their status because of the heart of God, and he wants you to know that if you want to be like him, it means you have to humble yourself. Become like the least. That's greatness. A child takes, a child needs. God is our Father. He knows that we take in need, but he loves us anyway. Now, I truly love guys like John, so he resembles me so much. And I think when Jesus deals with him, it shows me how he'd probably deal with me. So here's what John does. Like, Jesus brings a child in, he does this thing, and everyone's like, oh my goodness. And then John wants to deflect it, right? So he brings up something that's happened. And really what's behind this is he's asking Jesus, yeah, but what's in this for me? Look at what happens. Verse 38. Now, John answered him saying, Teacher, we saw someone who does not follow us. So you kind of see what's behind this. Casting out demons in your name. And we forbade him because he doesn't follow us. But Jesus said, don't forbid him. For no one who works as a miracle in my name can soon afterwards speak evil of me. That's Jesus' way of saying this. If the dude can do miracles, he's doing them because I'm letting him do them. That's a God thing. It's not a man thing. Okay, and so here's what he says. For he who is not against me is on our side. For whoever gives you a cup of cold water to drink in my name because you belong to Christ, assuredly I say to you, he will by no means lose his reward. So Jesus addresses this. A primary threat to greatness is exclusivism. There's something amazing that Jesus does here to teach us something about him. On at least 3 occasions in this 2-chapter scenario, Jesus outlines his mission and how it's going to unfold. And again, it's the he's going to be falsely accused and arrested and crucified. And he's going to die. And in 3 times that this happens, these disciples start playing power games because the world hardwires us to seek greatness by our own power. And they had to get through that, and so do we. So do we. Like Peter rebuked Jesus, remember this? You know, when Jesus, he said, and then Jesus said what to him? Hey, you have the voice of the devil. Shut up. Shut up. And then John tries to make this point about their superiority because they're in the in crowd. And Jesus said, hey, not about you. It's about me and it's about us. And this guy's doing my work. And then in the near future, the 2 brothers, James and John, he'll be back again. They're going to ask Jesus for jobs number 1 and 2 in the kingdom. And Jesus says, hey, again, it's not about you. But here's what we do, guys. And you know this. We ask the question, how can I improve my place in the pecking order? Like even when you drive into a roundabout, it's like, I'm not giving up my little space when I get into that thing. You got to stop. Sometimes they do, right in the middle of it. They're just being like Jesus. Just understand that. Just being like Jesus, letting you go first, you know. So, Good luck with that. Anyway, but it's about what's behind us, what behind our thinking. Will being a disciple of Jesus make me greater? I mean, is that really what you're about? When will this being his disciple do that for me? My wife and I are going two different directions. I want to win the argument, even when I'm wrong. My kids are challenging me, and well, I'm your dad. I brought you into this world. I can take you out. I know you've never said that, but somebody has. Church is growing somewhere, and it's not your church, and it's like, oh, well, they must be tickling people's ears, telling them what they, that's a preacher thing there. I think Jesus is telling us in no uncertain terms, there's great benefit when the kingdom wins, even if winning is because of someone else. Now, here's another thing we see here. The checkpoint of true greatness is self-evaluation. One of the hardest things we'll ever do in life, if we do it fairly and honestly. Verse 43, these are kind of obscure teachings, but they fit right in. If your hand causes you to sin, cut it off. It's better for you to enter into life maimed rather than having two hands to go to hell, into the fire that shall never be quenched. Where the worm does not die and the fire is not quenched. People aren't talking about that very much. And if your foot causes you to sin, cut it off. It's better for you to enter life lame rather than having 2 feet to be cast into hell, into the fire that never will be quenched, where the worm does not die, the fire is not quenched. If your eye causes you to sin, pluck it out. It's better for you to enter the kingdom of God with one eye rather than having 2 eyes to be cast into fire hell, where that worm doesn't die there either and the fire is not quenched. I mean, these are hard things. He describes hell with such horror that I think he's trying to get our attention. He's trying to say, you don't want to go there. And by the way, there's only 2 choices, right? I mean, I remember when I was a kid, if I didn't like what we're having for supper, my dad would say, there are 2 choices, take it or leave it. And he meant it, by the way. Mom didn't pop up and make me a grilled cheese sandwich, I promise you that. Here Jesus says, look, you can have the best, or you can have the worst. You got to choose which one. I think it's good to do some evaluation. I'm going to lead us into some reflection time in the Lord's Supper and ask you to do some personal inventory of these 3 areas. This is the challenge I have for you today. This is what I want to ask you to do, and I'm going to do it too. I'm doing it. I've been doing it all week. What are your hands into? And I'm going to talk specifically to dads. What are you using your hands for? I know you're making a living. Good. You need to do that. But how are you using them to fill your accounts? Whose kingdom are you using them to build? What do you want to hand to your kids? Is it just $1 million? Because that's just temporary stuff. Or is it something greater? Where are your feet taking you? What are you chasing? The foot is the symbol of the path that we're on, our approach to temptation, to the circumstances that we're going after, where we're leading others, where we're leading those who are dependent on us. What are your eyes longing for? What are you looking at? You know how many men have told me this who are wrapped up in pornography or something worse? I say, when did that start? It was when I was a kid. Why? My dad was. That's real, friend, and you got to deal with it. And he can change you and he can change them, but you got to let him. I mean, in very stark terms, Jesus says, serving hands, feet on the right path, eyes that are focused on the right things, you'll lead them the right place. That's what it takes. The effect of greatness, by the way, is saltiness. For everyone will be seasoned with fire, and every sacrifice will be seasoned with salt. Salt is good. Why is salt good? Good. In their day, it was important. It was crucial because it was a preservative. And in their day, it did the same thing it does in our day. It gave flavor. It gave flavor to things. He says, have salt in yourselves, have peace with one another. The world can't survive without you being the salt in the world. That's what he's showing them. That's what he's showing us. The salt of self-judgment. A salt that purifies, a salt that cleanses, a salt that brings flavor. I judge myself. I look at myself. I evaluate what I'm doing, and then I learn to control myself. And if I do that, I'll bring peace to people. And I'm responsible for that, and so are you. Remember how the section opens? Group of disciples are arguing about who's going to be the greatest. They're fighting, they're competing. He says the remedy is to begin with yourself, to deal with your weaknesses, not other people. Don't worry about their weaknesses. They got their hands full. Cleanse your own life, not someone else's. Start dealing drastically with the things that need to change in your life. And you start by treating others without prejudice, by serving others before yourself, by building into their lives and strengthening them as a person. And instead of judging others, you just take some salt and you start looking at yourself. Drastically at the things in your life that are off kilter with Jesus. You do that, you'll start seeing great things. And they'll be great things because he makes them great. Lord, as we commune today, it's a time of reflection. I'm going to throw back those 3 challenges you gave us. Where are my hands? What are they doing? Where are my feet leading me? What are my eyes after? What am I longing for? What am I looking for? How am I dealing with this world in terms of my hands, my feet, my eyes? Lord, I'm sure that most everyone here will have something to deal with. And I'm equally certain that you can help. You can create something new for them. And so, Lord, I'm asking you to do that and give them confidence in that. And as they commune, they're remembering not that they're perfect. They're remembering what you did in that grand mission to save our souls. And they're celebrating the fact that you overcame all of our sin. Thank you, Jesus. Amen. There's a photo booth out on the plaza if you want to stop out there with your dad and take a picture. We'd love to have you do that. Maybe buy him a nice coffee or something like that. Do something for your dad today. I like what Jim Gaffigan says about being a dad. He says, there should be a children's song. If you're happy and you know it, keep it to yourself and let your dad have a nap. So today, just give your dad one of those. Have a great day.